Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Sunday Dharma talk here at Heartwood Refuge. Yeshi, can we start with incense burning, please? Thank you.
Incense burning, all space is filled with the fragrance. All Buddhas smell it from afar. Auspicious clouds gather everywhere. With utmost sincerity, all Buddhas appear. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage, we offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas.
Good afternoon again. This talk today, if I do a Dharma talk here, it always has to be based upon kind of what I'm seeing and kind of where the Dharma is for me right now. And for me, this image of nobody, right, going from somebody to nobody. It has really come into view. So I always loved this idea, even when in my youth, when I was involved in meditation and ashrams and that sort of thing. There were always stories about, all the king's castle and the person out sweeping the courtyard and doing all these rudimentary tasks that everyone abuses, walks over. Everyone's there to get to the source of the power. The king, they want something, there's all that going on. And meanwhile, there's this person, in the courtyard who it's got it all and nobody knows it. So I just always love those stories. So I wanted to start with one. This is a book called The Masters of Mahamudra. I saw that Panyamati had it one day and said, well, if he's got it, maybe it's of interest to me. So I picked it up and I have a copy. So I've used a couple of these stories in our Dharma contemplations. It's by Pete Dowman. And I'm going to read part of this one story here about the Siddhartha. He's called the exclusive Brahman. Starts with a little verse. It says, knowing emptiness, deluded vision is purified. Contemplating loving kindness, behavior is perfected. Understanding the unity of multiplicity is meditation. And the ultimate goal is the ubiquitous one taste. So in the country of Manidara, a Brahmin lived in the lap of luxury with his many friends. Though he possessed untold wealth, he had a constantly anxious mind. One day, after his friends had gone to perform their ritual ablutions, leaving him alone in the house, A well-disciplined yogin appeared begging for food. Unclean, unclean, you defile my house, shouted the Brahmin angrily. Get out of here before my friends return and see you. They will curse me for allowing you in. What do you mean unclean? Asked the yogin quietly. Unwashed, unclothed, carrying a skull bowl, eating polluted food and born of a low caste, the Brahmin retorted. Now go, quickly. The yogin did not move. That is not unclean, he protested mildly. Viciousness in body, speech, and mind is uncleanliness. How can you remove the subtle defilements of your mind by your ritual bath? Only by bathing in the Guru's instruction, pure from the beginning, can you become truly pure. And he's saying these lines. Bodhisattvas are the highest beings, not priests or kings. The precepts of the lineal Guru, cleansing body, speech, and mind, alone gives the real, matchless purity. Washing the body can never do that. Desirelessness is the best table in repast, not milk, cheese, or curd. Well, the Brahmin was impressed, and gaining confidence in the yogin, he asked for further instruction. Give me food and I will teach you, the yogin offered. You cannot stay here, said the Brahmin, suddenly frightened again. My friends and household have no faith. I will come to your house and listen to you there. I live in the cremation ground, the yogin told him. Bring liquor and pork when you come. How can I do that? The Brahmin objected. We Brahmins are forbidden even to speak those words. If you want instruction, do as I say, the yogin insisted. But I can't come during the day or people will see me. I come at night. I'll come at night, he compromised. After the yogin had left, the Brahmin disguised himself, and went to the marketplace to buy liquor and pork. When night fell, he made his way to the cremation ground, and finding the yogin, he served him his meat and drink, taking the portion he was given. Then his guru initiated him with a transfer of grace, and he offered the guru a mandala of thanksgiving. As instruction, in order to break his pride of caste, and as a symbolic demonstration of correct vision, he was ordered to sweep the yogin's latrine. As a symbolic demonstration of correct action, he was told to plaster the yogin's hut. And the color of the line was the symbolic object of correct meditation. Finally, to symbolize the goal, his guru explained the attainment of vision, meditation, and action as one. The Brahmin realized the meaning of those symbols and recognized phenomena in existence as delusory figments of mind. He forsook his caste and with its prejudices and became a yogin. And after 6 years of meditation, he achieved Mahamudra Siddhi and became renowned as the yogin Bhadrata. So these stories always move me, but I think that story really points out this idea that the Brahmin has such a strong sense of being somebody, and to the exclusion of all else, just somebody, and all his friends, either needed him to be or he needed to be somebody for all of that. And of course, the yogin taught him how to become the opposite of that, and to really realize the truth of what this life, has to offer for us. So it reminds me that, the Buddha taught that the cause of all of our suffering is that we think we're somebody. We create these fixed identities, we get attached to them. Then we have to promote, protect, defend those identities and the objects that substantiate them. This lifelong saga of what I have, what I've done, how that makes me this or that somebody. This is what Buddha Master calls attachment to self. He says it's what keeps us bound to samsara. Samsara is this realm that we live in that even includes the heavens, where we're all bound to this cyclic existence of birth and death. So here's some quotes from the Supreme and Unsurpassable Mahamudra of Liberation from the Buddha Master on this topic. He says, whenever I have selfish motives and act for my own interest, I am tying a knot of samsara. So we're going further in. We must turn a deaf ear whenever anyone says that I'm good or says that I'm bad, defames me, verbally harms me, or praises me. When all the knots of our attachment to self are severed, in a natural and unhindered way, the nature of emptiness appears. We're liberated from samsara and we will ascend to holy status. Now, I listened to the recording of the Supreme Notice of Paschal Mahamudra liberation, several times. In the beginning, especially when we first got it, we were trying to figure out what to do with it and making notes. It wasn't until I had taken a break from that, and then is there a bug? It wasn't until I had taken a break, and then later I hurt my back. Everybody remembers I was down for a while. I wasn't coming here, and I hurt my back, and I was kind of laying on my back a lot and listening, using that time to kind of listen to the Mahamudra Liberation recording again, and specifically the second recording. And that statement, that when all the knots of our attachment to self are severed, in a natural and unhindered way, the nature of emptiness appears. That hit me like a bolt of lightning. I was, what? What? You're saying that all we have to do is sever our attachment to self, and that, like, directly by itself leads to liberation? Not all this complexity of, the meditation technology and all the different, there was an email going around, so complex. Oh, you guys are way over my head. I'm hoping by the Buddha Master statement here that I never have to get that. But having heard that, kind of begs the question, well, how do we know when we're no longer attached to self? And the Buddha Master says, he says, when I come across my adversaries, if I still give rise to revenge, anger, or hatred, that means I have not yet cut off attachment to self. So we even have a way of measuring it. So to me, and this has been a realization of mine for a long time. Buddhism is the path of letting go. I think it's pretty clear. I think we all know that. Letting go of our identities or attachments to them, becoming nobody, really. The opposite is what the Buddha said caused all of our suffering. These days, I see these teachings so clearly. It seems everywhere I look, it's all I see. On the one hand, it's so simple, yet so complex. Complex because we have encounters in the world and realize that almost no one that we encounter in the world is aware of this problem. Yet they suffer. And the Buddha called that ignorance. So as an example, with me, you hear a lot about tennis because we spend a lot of time on the tennis. We play tennis 2-3 times a week, so we're not together, but in clinics and things like that. So it's where we encounter people the most, especially in a personal way, where there's an exchange and a dialogue and that sort of thing. So recently, I take a clinic on Thursday mornings, and before the Thursday last week, I got a text from one of my associates that also takes these clinics and said, hey, do you want to play mixed doubles with this other person and on Thursday morning? And I said, well, normally I go to the clinic. I said, in this case, Sue's got a medical appointment, so we won't be able to do that. And then he went on to say, I said, well, but there's the clinic. And then he said, well, so-and-so had words with the coach that normally does that clinic. And once again, it struck me, what? That had words, meaning that the coach said something that the person, the coach is there to instruct. And this coach happens to be from the Caribbean. In her English, in order to construct her words in the way we expect in America, I can see that she works hard to construct her, and so it's easier for her to just say, Joe, you're not doing it. It's just easier for her to talk like that. Well, apparently that rubbed this one person the wrong way. And so now there's all this conflict. Now, there's the Thursday morning clinic, and I look up, so I go to the Thursday morning clinic. Sue doesn't go because she has a medical appointment. And I look up in the balcony where people wait before they can have the court, where the court's open at a certain time. And there's my friend, and then the woman who had the problem. They're sitting up there waiting, like as if they're waiting for the circus to start, and they're waiting for our court. And I just see, all this kind of, protecting of self. I even see my friend kind of protecting the self of the woman, like he took this on. So, well, we'll have a clinic, we'll do it on our own. We'll have a match on our own. We won't go to our clinic, we'll do it. And they're gonna do it right after. And the coach had said to me, yeah, so-and-so's not coming because she didn't like what I said to her the other day. I'm like, I come here to get instruction. I don't really care how you say it. I want to hear what you have to say because I'm trying to learn. So this is how, this not being able to kind of, maybe get our eyes off ourselves and just this focus on who we are and what someone can say to us and what we have to protect and defend and all this causes all the problems that we see in the world. I remember in the beginning, being exposed to the Buddhist teachings, this idea of the Four Noble Truths made absolutely no sense to me. I mean, just no sense to me whatsoever. Way too simple. Wait a minute, what? Those four statements, that there's suffering, that there's a cause of suffering, and that's craving and becoming, and then there's a way out of suffering, and it's these, wait a minute. So, but, I was just so enmeshed in my own views and attachments, and it's kind of where we all come from, that it was hard for me to see past those things to anything that might be, kind of true beyond that. So, I won't see all the things I was holding on to and cherished so much. So how could this be true? How could this be the cause of all the suffering in the world that, we crave, sensuality, and then, we take on identities to enjoy it. I mean, how could that really be it? So over time, continued exposure to the teachings and with a willingness to try to give it a try, it starts to form a picture. Sometimes we can't even see past our own fixed views without a little help. Is what I'm learning. And but as long as we have a willingness to kind of see the benefit and the wisdom and the truth of these teachings, then we can benefit. So just in terms of, sometimes we can't even see our own fixed views without a little help. Here's an example that came up recently. So I played tennis with some people that we play outdoors in the summertime, because that place, all they have is outdoor courts. And of course, now that winter's coming, that dries up. So some of those guys that I know like to play, want to play, I'd say come over to the racket club, because they have clinics, and that's what I do during the winter, because it's indoors. They have indoor courts. And I've suggested this to this person several times over the last couple of weeks, knowing that this is coming, that he's not going to be able to play where he's been playing all summer. And I know he really wants to play. And each time I mention it to him, I don't get a response. And so, and I've mentioned to him a couple of times, and I don't get a response. So I have this impression that, it's got to be his idea. That's what I came up with. It's got to be his idea. That he'll probably come eventually, but I have to stop mentioning it. It's got to be his idea. And I mentioned that to Sue the other night. She says, "You're like that." And as soon as she said it, I realized, and my first reaction was, well, I was like that. Because then I can see all the time, yes, I am like that, yes. It's gotta be my idea. I want it to be my original idea. Like if I'm gonna take credit for this later on, I want to have come up with it, right? I don't want it to be your idea and I just implement it, So it was a revelation to me. I'm like, I do have that. I do have that. I think I don't have as much of it as I did in the past. But I mean, when you think about cultivation, I mean, Sue has been doing what we call cultivation in one way or another for most of the time that I've known her, all of the time that I've known her. And, as she would learn things and be in learn different things, she would suggest to me, you should try this, you should do this. And every time she would say one of those things, I'd be like, well, I will. It's my idea. Maybe I will. It's my idea. So again, sometimes we need a little help at seeing where our faults are. Sometimes we get it from the Dharma. Sometimes we get it from the people in our lives. If we really want to learn, we're okay with this, right? We're not going to not go to the clinic because someone said we never listen when we're supposed to, or whatever the thing was. Now, of course, when we take this and broaden it out, this problem that the Buddha describes in those Four Noble Truths is playing out on kind of on a grand scale in our communities, in our governments, between countries. All the problems in our society and the world have their source in one thing, this affliction of self-attachment. Self-attachment that kind of leads to those three poisons: greed, hatred, delusion. And this has been playing out since humans have existed. All the different calamitous sort of events and activities that have been caused by human in the world, this is the source. So it seems, it's becoming so simple to me. It's become so simple. I look out and I go, that self thing, that's the cause of the problem. I can see it. That's the cause. Just let it go. Let it go. But look at the complexity we have in the world. I mean, people just don't see this. So it's kind of like a wall that I run into, realizing, wow, I've been sort of working on this, and everybody in this room's kind of, whoever's in earshot has been working on this in one way or another for years. I have this view developing for me because of that work and my willingness to sort of try to learn this, as esoteric as it sounded, or that word maybe, as out there as it sounded initially. That I was willing to give it a shot. So it kind of begs the question for me, does this mean we can't help people who are suffering in the world? Because it seems, that they would have to do what we've done in order to see what we see, in order to be able to engage the process of letting go of all the things that are causing them all this trouble. And what I've arrived at is it seems like all we can really do is kind of work on getting our eyes off ourselves, because we know to do that. We know that that's the solution to the problem. We know that's the problem. When we have our eyes on ourselves and we're focused on our own, the things we need to protect and defend, then we suffer, and then the people around us suffer as a result. So all we can really do is cultivate a kind of a sense of loving kindness and compassion for others, as we learn in the various teachings that are offered. The benefit is our success in that endeavor will ensure that we're contributing less to the problem, right? So that's job one. Let's not be contributors to the problem. Let me not be reacting to the coach on the tennis court in a way that's going to make everyone nervous and feel like we can't move, right? Let me not be doing that. That's contributing to the problem. Anytime we take on someone who says something we think is wrong, no matter how wrong they might be, still, when we get into that back and forth with a mind that's never going to be able to get to where you're coming from, if you've got sort of a little of this under your belt, are we contributing to the problem, or are we really solving anything with all that? So starting to kind of see, and maybe we can, through our actions, through our behavior, influence and cause people to ask a question like, hey, why does this person seem so happy, so settled? Why don't they ever seem to engage in what I would consider righteous squabbles? Battles worth fighting. Didn't they hear when that person said they were a bad player or criticized their knowledge of the game? I consider that to be offensive. Why don't they? So as always with Buddhism, the responsibility for anything we think is wrong starts with us, right? For all the work, this is the only place the work can be is with us. With each of us taking responsibility for our own part. In Buddhism, we call that cultivation. And each person that's to be saved in the world has to do this themselves. But we can be the example that inspires them to get started. And possibly reduce their own suffering, reduce their suffering in the meantime, just by how we interact with them, by our own skillful speech and action. So we can help, but it's only through the cultivation of loving kindness and compassion in our own hearts. This also happens to be the fastest way to begin eroding our own attachment to self. That is, by placing our continual focus on the well-being of others, we get our eyes off ourselves. By doing so, we're chipping away at our own attachment to self. So what this all boils down to me, there's a bookshelf behind you, and there's like all those books on the top. And that's the Buddhist canon. Those are all the teachings from the Buddha. This all boils down to, for me, so we're either selfish, and we suffer, but we're somebody, or we're selfless, and we become free of suffering, and we're nobody. Again, from the Supreme and Unsurpassable Mahamudra Liberation, Buddha Master states, whenever I patiently endure insults and adversity, am compassionate, benefit others, bear the dark karma of others, I'm untying the knots of samsara and advancing in the direction of attaining liberation and ascending to the holy status of a bodhisattva. I am planting causes by carrying out the greatly compassionate actions of a bodhisattva. He goes on to say, patiently enduring insult and adversity benefits people most. Patiently enduring insult and adversity benefit people most. So if you insult me and I patiently endure it, that benefits you most. Rather than, like I said before, my engaging you and saying, what? No, and by the way, that is contributing to the problem, right? So I'm not helping you by doing that, because I'm just contributing to your sense that there's a right and a wrong, or a black and a white. And that's not helpful because it's not true. Buddha Master also states in the Mahamudra of Liberation that what we're really experiencing in this life, in our interactions with others, is our own karma. So an example of that between Sue and I recently. I make a chicken once in a while, and we roast the chicken. And then I make bone broth with carcass, the bones. We'll usually, having roasted the chicken, eat it that night as a meal, part of it. And then I'll make another meal with it, whether it's soup or, curry or something. So that's the plan for the chicken. And so on this one particular night, Sue's mom had been over the week before, and I made the chicken. And normally what happens, because I need the bones for the broth, is that Sue and I will each have a leg and a thigh, that part of the chicken. It's like a kind of a 90 degree. So that's each of those leg and thigh, take that off, and we have that as a meal with, And then there's the whole rest of the chicken, basically the breast, that I use for other things. I'll strip that all off and put the carcass in the bone broth. So I need the bones. So, but the week before, when Sue's mom was here, Sue and I had the leg and quarter. And of course, we had to give something to Sue's mom. Now there's three of us. So I cut off a few slices of the breast and I gave it to Sue's mom. And then Sue happened to mention at the table that that's her favorite. So on this particular night, now a week later, I'm making another chicken. And I'm getting ready to cut. And I thought, oh, well, she likes the breast, maybe along with her leg and thigh, I'll give her a slice of breast, she enjoys it. Well, then she says that's all she wants. And now this creates a problem. Because there's a leg and a thigh, but I can't eat both of them. But I need the bone for the broth. So, but I need the bones for the broth, so this creates a conflict. So I surrender. I think I resisted a little bit, trying to talk her out of it. And then I did. So then I had to sort of, and then I was kind of doing this thing a little bit. You know how you do? Moving things around like this, letting her know that. And so I eventually, so I got to where I gave her the breast, and I was going to have my one leg and thigh, and then I said, well, I guess I'll have to save the other leg and thigh, for like lunch tomorrow. Of course, I won't have the bones for the broth. Maybe I could put them in later. It's all this kind of rationale going on in my mind. So, so that transpired. Not much was said. This is one of the things that Sue and I together, I think, are learning is that rather than kind of take things up right there, I know I probably screwed something up, and she knows. So we just kind of leave it. We had dinner. We had a good night, and then the next day, the subject came up. And but the way it came up was Sue realized, hey, last night when you said and got upset when I said what I really wanted, that made me feel like I was inconveniencing you. And that's how I felt my whole life growing up, with my impatient family and all of that. So, so she had a realization of some conditioning that she had that contributed to sort of, how that interaction that night made her feel. And she felt like because she saw it for what it was, that she could move beyond it. So the reason I tell this story is because what I realized is that in order for her to see that, she had to have a chance to relive that karma one more time. And I delivered that to her by my action. She got one more crack at it, and now she saw something that could help her move forward. She delivers to me my karma of everything's good as long as everything's just so. Even Panyalani knows this by now, she says it. Everything's good as long as everything's just so. So she delivered that karma to me, and I had a chance to look at it, move beyond it. So, life's getting simpler. But as the Buddha Master said, we have to be patient and practice forbearance in our encounters with others in our lives. Otherwise, again, we're not only contributing to the problem, but we're strengthening, our own self-attachment as well. So I have a quote, one of my prior Dharma talks. After one of my prior Dharma talks, my sister sent me a quote from Thomas Merton. I wanted to read it now. I think it applies and it follows nicely from what the Buddha Master said. He says, but I cannot treat other men as men unless I have compassion for them. That one statement to me, other men as men, strikes me as, from what is cultivation, this idea of self and others are equal. I can't treat other men as men. I can't treat other men equally. Maybe I can't treat other men without judging them, right? Unless I have compassion for them. I must have at least enough compassion to realize that when they suffer, they feel somewhat as I do when I suffer. And if for some reason I do not spontaneously feel this kind of sympathy for others, then it is God's will that I do what I can to learn how. I must learn to share with others their joys, their sufferings, their ideas, their needs, and their desires. I must learn to do this not only in cases of those who are of the same class, the same profession, the same race, the same nation as myself, but when men who suffer belong to other groups, even to groups that are regarded as hostile. If I do this, I obey God. If I refuse to do it, I disobey him. It is not therefore a matter left open to subjective caprice. And that comes, so again, that's Thomas Merton, comes from new seeds of contemplation. So the equivalent of this in Buddhism is we have the teachings of the Brahma Viharas, as well as the Bodhisattva path, to guide us in the development of this kind of limited, loving, patient, and unselfish heart. So I wanted to take a look at the Brahma Viharas today. As many of you I'm sure know, they can be practiced as either a form of sitting meditation, or ideally, we can have them in mind as we engage in our day-to-day activities off the pillow. So starting with the term Brahma Vihara, it's a Pali word, and it comes from two words. The first is the word Brahma. In the Buddhist time, the Brahma was a deity, or Brahma was a deity who lived in a heavenly realm. So that was what a Brahma was. And then Vihara means abode or dwelling. So it's the abode of Brahma, or abiding in the abode of Brahma. This is kind of the action word, or the way we would see it ourselves. So it's pointing to the mind of one who's fully cultivated these qualities. The Buddha suggested on many occasions that developing the Brahma Viharas fully leads to awakening, which reminds me of what the Buddha Master said, that eliminating self-attachment, emptiness naturally arises. So there are four Brahma Viharas, as they're called. The first is metta, also known as loving kindness. And it's a basic goodwill that wishes well-being for others. And it's somewhat the basis for the next two Brahma Viharas. It can also be translated as gentle friendliness. I'm getting these definitions, by the way, from oneminddharma.com. The next one, karuna, or compassion. This is where metta becomes compassion when it meets suffering. So we have this goodwill that we're walking around with. It's who we are. We have this goodwill. When it meets suffering, it becomes compassion. It's the intention to care and be present for someone who's suffering. It's an antidote to the aversion we normally feel when we encounter someone suffering. Next is mudita, which is translated different ways, appreciative or sympathetic joy. And it's when metta becomes mudita, when it meets joy. It's simply the practice of appreciating and sharing in the joy and happiness of others. It's also an antidote to jealousy and envy. So someone with a jealous mind, nice to have these things. How would we work on ourselves without these things, right? We've got to have a way for our mind to focus beyond the ways that it's habitually learned to spend its energy. And then the last one, upekkha, equanimity. Says that's a container of balance that helps kind of hold all of the other Brahma Viharas, and it keeps us stable. Words often used in association with equanimity include acceptance, patience, and stability. With equanimity practice, we recognize that the happiness and suffering of another person is dependent on that person's action. All beings are in charge of their own karma. Upekkha practice brings us acceptance and patience with others. Although we may have compassion and want for someone's suffering to end, doesn't mean it will. So our wanting the best for others doesn't necessarily represent a cure in and of itself. Rather, these are practices of opening our own hearts. There's a great example that I saw from Gil Bronsell. It's the example of a puppy. And again, many of you who have worked with the Brahma Viharas, this is maybe a common example. But it says in their simplest forms, the Brahma Viharas are attitudes experienced in ordinary everyday life. It's not that much of a stretch for us to get to these. So, for instance, seeing a small puppy can invoke loving kindness, a feeling of appreciation, goodwill, and friendliness towards the puppy. If the puppy gets hurt, we may feel compassion, sense of kindness, caring, a sincere wish for the puppy not to suffer. If the puppy's frolicking around, we may feel appreciative joy, delighting in the happiness the dog seems to be feeling. And when the puppy's overeager to run after a squirrel and then deflated when it can't catch it, we feel the Brahma Vihara of equanimity. We can clearly love the dog with a stability that keeps us from becoming either elated or distressed by its ups and downs. So the equanimity gives us kind of wisdom to know what we can and can't do in any given situation. So I just love the way that flows because it gives us a way to kind of be in the world. This kind of patient, providing presence, being there, always wishing the best for others. Feeling compassion, helping where we can when they suffer, or wishing they didn't. And again, the presence, to be with someone who is suffering, knowing that we may not be able to cure it. Someone has cancer, that sort of thing, but having the courage to stay there and not run away, which is our natural tendency. So the practice of loving kindness, there's a meditation that can be used to sort of, we have to train our minds to remember this stuff when we're walking around in the world, because otherwise we just get caught up in our habitual tendencies. So there's a meditation that can be done, starts with sending loving kindness to yourself, and then to others that are close, and then farther and farther out to include all beings. All beings, of course, it's hard for us to imagine, right? So we start with cultivating a sense of love and kindness for something we know. Maybe even start with that puppy. Then through the meditation, we try to hold on to that. Interestingly, starting with loving kindness for ourselves can be, for some of us, the hardest thing about it. For example, when someone's sick, I normally make them an object of a loving kindness meditation of my own. I'll contemplate wishing them good health, visualizing them having healthy, vibrant, pink cells everywhere in their body. Imagine them to be standing, strong, healthy, vibrant, not a care in the world. However, for some reason, it never occurred to me to send loving kindness to myself when I myself am sick. I guess it seems like more like giving is selfless. Giving to others is selfless. But when I do it for someone else, that's what it feels like. But maybe it feels a little bit selfish to kind of consider it doing it for myself. But I guess I realized, aren't we, all of us, included in the kind of the all beings? I think we count. So that is actually, something that I'm starting to include in my practice. Doctor told me I had something wrong with the thyroid. There's always these, if you go to the doctor, you're going to hear something, right? Especially as you get older. So instead of doing loving kindness, imagining my own clean cells, imagining my own thriving, so cultivating a mind of compassion even for ourselves. So in conclusion, again, I look at how we're all suffering, and I just want to yell out, hey, just get your eyes off yourself and everything will be great. It's simple. It's a thing. But, then I realized, how did I even come to be able to see any of this? I could hardly retrace all those steps. But I know unless we're working on, cultivating goodwill towards others, our minds won't change. And the world won't change either. And we'll continue to be the source of the world's trouble. We'll be part of the problem. We have been, and we'll continue to be. Struck me when I was preparing this that all the saints and sages have been saying this for eons. It's like a broken record. And I think because I always heard it, it's one sentence. So simple. Can't be that simple. Can't be that simple. But I'm really beginning to see that it is. It really is. So I'm either giving to myself or I'm holding on to myself. Which one do we think would make us free? Holding on or letting go? So we're giving ourselves away. But we have to practice, because even though, this is really who we are, they tell us, it's not natural for us to simply be loved. The world's always telling us we got to be more. More to us, more to say, more to do. Life gets so complicated when all we're focused on is ourselves and our possessions. So let's be part of the solution, rather than continue to contribute to it. We have some time. I wanted to read. This is a sutta called the Metta Sutta, and it's about loving kindness. First of all, I want to mention in our recent Dharma contemplation, which we do at noon on Thursdays, Susan selected this passage, and I'm not going to read the whole passage, but the Buddha makes a statement here in the second paragraph, and it goes to what we've been talking about. It says, having cultivated for 7 years a mind of loving kindness, for 7 eons of contraction and expansion, I did not return to this world. Having cultivated for 7 years a mind of loving kindness, for 7 eons, I did not return to this world. I made the comment the other day, I've been at this for about 4 years.
Math, Joe.
Good one. So that's that. And then, since we have some time, I wanted to go through and really, I think this Metta Sutta really gives us a sense for how to be in the world. This is something that if you so desired, you could use daily, review daily as a reminder for how to walk out in the world and how to carry yourself. It says, this is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. That line strikes me because let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. It occurred to me a couple of weeks ago. I have a tendency that I come from a family of a lot of kind of jokesters, right? So I have a tendency to always be making jokes. And for me, it was a way of kind of getting attention or throwing attention off of, myself, for various reasons, whatever. But, it's one of those things that it can endear people to me. So it's one of the ways that I get attention for myself, and making jokes. So it occurred to me a few weeks ago, and I'm trying to get more sincere with where if there is really something funny, and especially if it's going to enhance the the well-being of another, then it's worth saying. But I'm starting to recognize when maybe these jokes are taking a little more than they're giving, right? And it occurred to me, wow, I'll bet you, I've never met Buddha Master, but I'll bet you that he would just go around and making jokes, as he's walking along in a crowd or whatever, just kind of making jokes for the sake of making jokes, for the sake of getting attention for himself. It's probably not how he was. He made a joke, there was probably a message in it somehow. I can imagine the same thing with Jesus or anybody that, So let me not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. If I have this image of how I think someone like Buddha Master or Jesus would be in the world and the purposeful nature that they would have as they walked around in the world with this view of so much suffering, and the seriousness of this to them, that they wouldn't just be making flip jokes about how people dressed or these kinds of things. I mean, this wouldn't be doing that. So I found a model that I could follow, I thought. So it goes on to say, wishing, in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, the medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child. So with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding the fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again in this world. So I wanted to end with a song that for me kind of evokes that tender image of being nobody. but simultaneously so willing to embrace all that this marvelous existence has to offer right here in this moment. You just close your eyes and listen. She enunciates pretty well. The song is called Stay on the Rack. It's by Patty Griffin. Stuff out here. folks. Thank you all.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks, Joe.